Let's start with the first element. The first element is the scene heading. As you see, it changes here in the top left. As we change, we place our cursor elsewhere in the screenplay, that changes. Character, dialogue, action, and this is the scene heading or the slug line. This scene heading is incorrect in a few ways. For sure, or to start with, we need a space here and no dot here, instead space hyphen space. There's not a lot of margin for error with scene headings. You need to get those right. Absolutely immaculate. Now, some screenplays will have a double dash right there. That's fine too, but at least no dots here, only dashes and spaces. We're going to remove those colors because we don't want to see colors in a standard spec screenplay. That's more when you go into pre-production. And we also don't need any comments here. Remove the color here by remove markup, and that node can go as well. All right, so a very important, if not the most important part of a screenplay for the screenwriter is the action or description. So action description is describing what we see on the screen. We do that in the present tense. They walk through a thick forest. So not like in a novel walked or are walking even. We prefer a direct present tense. The character names, as you can see, are in caps. Now, this is not the first scene from the movie The Wizard of Oz, but for this example, Celtx pretended this is the opening scene, and as such, the characters are capitalized. As you introduce them, you will always place the character name in caps in description the first time around. As you can see, Dorothy is capitalized here, but no longer there. We've got mixed case the second time. You see that the action is described, and I'll read through it, and then I'll show you how you can touch it up, polish it, and make it look better. Dorothy, Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Toto walk through a thick forest in the land of Oz. Dorothy carries a basket, the Tin Man carries an axe and an oil can. The road is paved with yellow brick and is covered with dried branches and dead leaves. The Emerald City is seen far in the distance. So let's look at this again. We've got 5 lines of description, which is really too much. General consensus is you should never have more than 4 lines of description, and even that will be rare. Ideally, you break up action into separate shots or into separate actions. Now let's look at what this paragraph gives us. So first action is they walk through a thick forest in the land of Oz. So that's a group. Then we hone in, we focus on Dorothy. You can imagine that this may be, that first sentence may be a wide shot, and then we go to a medium shot that maybe, pans as we look at Dorothy and then the Tin Man. So it's a separate shot, it's a change of angle, and we will separate that out. And you can say, the first action is walking, second action is carrying. Well, they're still walking, but still. As the shot changes or the angle changes, we prefer to see a new paragraph. Dorothy carries a basket, Tin Man carries an axe and an oil can. Now the road is paved. We don't see the characters anymore in this sentence. There's another angle again. So we're going to separate that out. Covered with dried branches and dead leaves. Finally, the Emerald City is seen far in the distance. That's yet another angle or yet another shot. See how now we've really separated out every single sentence into separate paragraphs, and that makes it a lot easier to read. It makes it more visual. It represents more clearly how the action pans out on the screen and how the action is cut. This is more formal. Let's now look at what is it that each of these sentences tells us in terms of content. And I'd like to stick to what I call the 3 C's of a scene. That's clarity, cut or concision, and color. Most important is clarity. We understand fairly easily what we see on the screen. These 4 characters, Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and Toto. Toto is a dog. And typically they should each be introduced. We should give a description in terms of their physiology, what they look like, their sociology, what their function is, and ideally also their psychology. We won't go into this right now, but remember that when you write your screenplay, when you introduce a new character, you really need to give us the name, the age, and then those 3 elements. physiognomy, what they look like, sociology, and psychology. I assume that for now you know who these characters are from The Wizard of Oz, but you should never presume any such thing when you're writing your own screenplay. But so clarity is fine, check. Concision, I think we can cut this down further, and wherever you can cut, you must cut. You really need to present the most tight version, the tightest version of your screenplay possible. So this group walks through a thick forest in the land of Oz. Now, in the land of Oz, you've got to ask yourself, how can you tell? How do you know this is the land of Oz? If this is not set up visually elsewhere, then it shouldn't be there. So I'm going to take that out, because really all we see on the screen is these 4 characters walk through a thick forest. Full stop. That's it. Dorothy carries a basket, Tin Man carries an axe and an oil can. Now, the road is paved with yellow brick and is covered with dried branches and dead leaves. I'm going to argue that every thick forest has dried branches and dead leaves. Unless this is critical for the story, I'm going to take it out. So I'll repeat, you take out what is not essential to the story. For the sake of concision, ask yourself, if we leave it out, are we missing anything? Well, no, we don't, because we assume if we have a thick forest, there will be dried branches and dead leaves. So we're going to take that out, and look, we have just saved a line, and you'd be surprised how that could help you over the course of a feature screenplay. So the road is paved with yellow brick. Now that is essential, because we will call that the yellow brick road. We leave that in as a separate descriptive line. Finally, the Emerald City is seen far in the distance. Much like the Land of Oz, I have no indication of why the city is called the Emerald City. I mean, it may be a green city, but then that's what we see, a green city. We wouldn't necessarily call it with capitals Emerald and City. So a green city, and maybe because a green city is kind of interesting and it draws the attention, maybe we can say is glows far in the distance. And this is tighter, it's equally clear, and we're not losing any information here. So I would say this is a fairly bare version of that original paragraph, but if you can cut, you should. I'm going to leave the dialogue untouched here. I'm not saying this is the greatest dialogue in the world, but we're going to just leave dialogue because, it's more about the technique of writing great dialogue. It's not so much about the style in which or the format in which you write it, because the software will limit you. All I can say here is that in dialogue, you will never start new paragraphs. Dialogue must be continuous, and that's the case here. If you look, this long paragraph, it's more than 4 lines, but there is no rule that says dialogue cannot be that long. And you cannot interrupt, or break up. You see what happens. So just leave this as it is. But let's go to the next paragraph of description. They hear a deep growl from wild animals in the trees. And then that exclamation mark. I'd say never put exclamation marks in your description. That's a general rule. I'm not saying that there can't be any exception at any point in time, but as a general rule, don't. It's called author's intrusion. We'll leave that out. So just a full stop will do. They hear. To me, they indicates a multiple point of view. The Wizard of Oz is the story of Dorothy. We are in Dorothy's point of view. Here we don't even need to precise whose point of view it is. You can say a deep growl emerges from the trees. And because we don't know, we don't really know for sure where it comes from, I would not say from wild animals. Later it will appear that it is the lion. It's not even a plural, it's a singular. So I'm going to take that out. A deep growl emerges from the trees. I think that's more accurate. It's again tighter, and it is it's enough. That it's clear enough. So a deep growl emerges from the trees. What was that? Hopefully not a beast who likes to eat straw. Toto stands at attention with his ears perked up. I'll leave that as it is. We'll leave the dialogue. We go to the next paragraph here. Lion is introduced as red, so we'll leave out the markup. Toto starts to bark and growl at a tree in the forest. We hear a loud roar, and from behind a tree leaps a large lion. The Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Dorothy hide behind each other, while Toto fearlessly starts to nip at the lion. The lion picks up Toto with his large teeth and shakes him. Dorothy slaps the lion across the nose. The lion drops Toto. The lion becomes a key character. Typically, you would then capitalize the first letter of that character. And that, in the same way, you've got Tin Man capitalized here in the Scarecrow. So what we're going to do is each time lion appears after that initial introduction in capitals, the lion, and then again the lion. You might even do just lion. But for now, I'll do this. That will do for the sake of this particular lesson. All right. You already know this is too much. We've got 6 lines. We need to reduce that to a maximum of 4. But depending on how many actions there are, how many shots, it may even be more. Let's have a look. Toto starts to bark and growl at a tree in the forest. We hear a loud roar, and from behind the tree leaps a large lion. These 2 sentences are obviously completely different actions, so there's no harm in breaking that up. Focus on this first sentence. Toto starts to bark and growl at a tree in the forest. Robert McKee says don't use start to begin to. Therefore, a lot of executives will have read that book. Therefore, you don't do it. Don't use begins to or starts to. So Toto barks and growls at a tree in the forest. We know we're in the forest, so we're going to leave that out. Toto barks and growls at a tree. Next paragraph, there's still some leftover markup. We're going to remove that markup. We hear a loud roar, and from behind a tree leaps a large lion. So this is about the lion, and now this again is about the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Dorothy. Therefore, we're going to break that up. Let's look at this sentence. We hear a loud roar. From behind a tree leaps a large lion. We hear and we see. No one says you cannot use it, but some people frown at it. If you can avoid it, leave it out. So rehear places the point of view in the audience, so we wouldn't do that. So rather say a loud roar, or with a loud roar, rather. With a loud roar, comma, from behind a tree leaps a large lion. Okay, so with a loud roar, from behind a tree leaps a large lion. Maybe not the most elegant sentence. You could probably rephrase that better. I'm not a native English speaker, so cut me some slack, thank you. But for now, this will do. So with a loud roar, from behind a tree leaps a large lion. Next paragraph. The Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Dorothy hide behind each other while Toto fearlessly starts to nip at the lion. Remember what we said about starts and begins to? So he just nips at the lion. So that's an action by Toto, and then we have the action by the lion that follows. Therefore, we're going to break that up again. New paragraph for the new action. Okay, and as we've been doing previously, let's now focus on this paragraph. The Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Dorothy hide behind each other while Toto fearlessly nips at the lion. I would put a comma there. And look how beautifully these 2 lines effectively separate separate actions. All right, so we've got Scarecrow, Tin Man, Dorothy on one side, and we've got Toto and the lion on the other. Ain't that great? Then the lion picks up Toto with his large teeth and shakes him. Now these are 2 actions, and for that reason I would put a comma there. So it picks up Toto with his large teeth first, comma, and then shakes him. Because otherwise, if you remove this comma, and I want you to pay attention here, because commas are super powerful, and often they are misleading if you don't use them properly. If you remove that comma, I would expect that he picks it up, the lion picks up Toto with 2 things, with his large teeth and something else. That's not the case. He just picks Toto up with his large teeth. He picks up Toto with his large teeth, and then he does something else. So there's a new sentence, so to speak. A new subject and a new verb. So That's why we place the comma here. And if this is not entirely clear to you as I explain it, please do some research and read up on the use of commas. You may find contradictory information about it, but it's good to develop a certain style that is clear. And think about it. If you remove it, then you are suggesting there's a conjunction here between the teeth and the shaking, which there isn't. They're separate. Good. So lion picks up Toto with his large teeth, comma, and shakes him. Now Dorothy is the next action. Therefore, we set her apart. Dorothy slaps the lion across the nose. The lion drops Toto. Finally, I would even set this apart because here Dorothy is active and now the lion is active. Quick recap. So Dorothy slaps the lion across the nose. Good. And the lion drops Toto. I think we have improved this paragraph. This is effectively, it's a strong action paragraph. If you look at it, there's a lot happening. And by separating out these sentences, visually on the page, you can tell that there is a lot happening. There is a lot of action taking place. It's not a description. It's not a static situation. These are actions by these various characters, and they're described vertically almost, going down the page. So that suggests that it's quite exciting what's happening here. And we could, let's finish the scene. Dorothy picks up Toto and holds him in her arms. I would place a comma here again, otherwise I'm expecting that she picks up more than one item, more than just Toto. She picks up Toto, comma, and she holds him in her arms. So effectively, these are two sentences. Can you see how the use of comma may differentiate between different meanings? The cowardly lion starts to cry. So now we have called him the cowardly lion. It's kind of sneaked in here a little, and that's fine. So we now know that the new character, the lion, is cowardly. He starts to cry, and from this point onwards, we'll call him the cowardly lion. May not be ideal because it feels a little bit as if the screenwriter sneaks in that new predicate of cowardly, but I don't think anyone minds. The cowardly lion starts to cry. Here you could argue, well, there's that moment where he starts to cry, and that is what matters. It's not the continuous crying. On the other hand, I would not have an issue if you say the cowardly lion cries. The lion continues to sob, and I would capitalize it. Continues to sob uncontrollably. And then finally, the last paragraph. Toto barks at the lion who walks beside Dorothy. The lion reaches down and pets Toto on the head, and they become friends. The group set off down the yellow brick road toward the Emerald City. You will probably already predict that I'm going to break this up. Toto barks at the lion, so that's Toto's action. Then the lion reaches down, that's a new action, pets Toto on the head, they become friends. Then the group set off, yet another shot and a different action. Now let's look at these three paragraphs individually. Toto barks at the lion, I would say comma. If you remove that comma, then you're essentially suggesting there's more than one lion. And Toto barks at that specific lion, the particular lion who walks beside Dorothy. But by placing the comma, we clarify there's only one lion. And that lion walks beside Dorothy. So make sure you're on top of those punctuation rules. Toto barks at the lion, comma, who walks beside Dorothy. Good. The lion reaches down. And now we have a separate action again, comma, and pets Toto on the head. Now, I'm not sure what to think about this, and they become friends. Because that is really something internal. That's not something that is signaled clearly, obviously, outwardly on the screen. We get this from the petting on the head and the behavior, the action. So we can easily leave that out and it won't change the story. And you're now more consistent in describing what is visually on the screen. So avoid describing internal feelings and thoughts and so forth. Limit yourself to what is visible. The lion reaches down and pets Toto on the head. Great. And in the final sentence, the group sets off down the yellow brick road toward the Emerald City. Okay, we've set up the Emerald City in a first description. Now, from this point onward, we want to call it the Emerald City. Let's go back up and define that. A green city glows far in the distance. This is the Emerald City. Okay, so now for the purpose of this story, the reader knows that this green city is called the Emerald City, and then we can use it. So, but you need to set it up, and then you can use it at the end of the scene. There we go. That's how you improve description action for readability, for clarity, and for concision.